Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to the channel. It's time for another Ask WrestleJuice. You guys left a bunch of great questions. I couldn't answer them all. I did answer some of them on the actual thread, ones that maybe I didn't feel like I should do this on video, but I answered them anyways. Maybe I'll go through some of the other ones and answer those as well. In any event, if you want to submit your question for Ask WrestleJuice, I generally do this once a week. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notify bell. Also for All Out tomorrow, I'm going to be over at the Going in Raw stuff at youtube.com/Steven Larson and twitch.tv/Steven Larson watching All Out live and then doing our live review, the podcast review. And then after that, I'll be doing the hot takes over here at WrestleJuice. So we got a packed weekend. Let's go ahead and dive into your questions. First up, Atticus8659 says, which feud is better, Punk versus Drew or Swerve versus Hangman? Oh boy, you guys are really trying to get me to pick one or the other. It doesn't help that these are the different companies. So you guys are going to accuse me of tribalism no matter what. I will be honest with you. I will give you full reasons why I think this. I love both feuds. Okay, I'm going to say this. They are both A feuds. There is one that I think is an A plus though, and that is Hangman versus Swerve. And it's not just because of the burnt down house, which I think was an awesome angle. And I wish more feuds would think outside the box to do cool stuff. I'm not saying everybody needs to burn down a house. I'm saying that I like the metaphor. I like the idea that, oh, whose house? Swerve's house. Now he's burning it down. I think that's great. The idea that everybody embraced Swerve, even though he's a vicious, violent son of a bitch, and that's driven Hangman Adam Page crazy. The character development of the Hangman Adam Page character, I think, has been one of the most interesting ones that I've ever seen in professional wrestling. I think it's done a lot for him. I think it's a direction that AEW really needs to embrace in terms of that kind of character development with their roster. You don't see that a lot. I feel like WWE sort of does that a bit more often than AEW does with their characters because they're not necessarily focused on, oh, let's just do the best wrestling matches. They're focused on story and character. And I feel like AEW should try to at least emulate the level of detail, the attention to detail they've paid to the Hangman Swerve feud. I just think Hangman, to me personally, my opinion, he's one of the most compelling characters that I've seen in wrestling. And because of what we've seen with these two specifically, this is my feud of the year so far, and we're coming down to the end of the year. So this will probably end up being my feud of the year because I think the levels to the character development of Hangman Page has been the most interesting component out of any of this stuff. So yeah, I would give the edge to Hangman versus Swerve. Really looking forward to the cage match. And yeah, I think it's really terrific stuff. Not to take anything away from Punk and Drew. I think that's been also really, really, really great stuff. Love that feud. That's like a very, very close second to me. Drew Diesel 25 says, what defines a star in wrestling? Audience, popularity, ticket sales, ratings, or something else? I think the three things that you just listed there are kind of all part of the same element of what makes a wrestler a star. I don't think personally, like when you say who is a star, I don't think it has anything to do with what they can do in the ring. Generally speaking, though, what they can do in the ring is one of the vital components that the crowd can get behind. If you look at, for example, and I hate using him for an example, but it is what it is, Hulk Hogan. The way he was presented, his promos, and to a degree the stories that Vince put him in, whether it was the Andre WrestleMania 3 program, the Mega Powers, whatever, the crowd really got behind Hulk Hogan, and the dude really didn't do jack shit in the ring. But when he did those big moves like, I'm going to slam Andre the Giant, the crowd pops huge. So it's not necessarily what can this guy do in the ring. It's does what this guy does in the ring is what he does in the ring connecting with the crowd, if that makes any sense. But I mean, I think in terms of being a star, yeah, tickets, ratings, and popularity with the crowd, those are all kind of intermingled. If you get really popular with the crowd, they will show up to see you and they will tune into the television to see you. So if you're a draw, that's what the wrestling business is all about. It's a business. It's who can bring in people. It's who can, excite people. And if you're a bad guy, who shows up to see you get beat up? So that to me is what makes a star in wrestling. The rest is completely subjective. It's the question isn't who's your favorite or what makes your favorite. It's what makes a star in wrestling. What makes a star in wrestling are the people that draw money, or the people that bring people to the arenas. That's what a star is. Shawn Michaels 568 says, what was the year you had the most fun watching wrestling? I'll be honest with you, man. When I think about, I've got like a couple answers, I think. Like 2017, Larson and I, we went traveling a little bit. We went out and saw a lot of shows. We went to WrestleMania that year, and that, whole weekend we saw a bunch of indie shows, and I feel like we were watching a lot more in person, which I had a good time doing. I'll be honest with you, those guys. I got to go back to 1998 when we used to gather at one of our friends' house. Usually it was Jeff's house. And we'd show up there, hang out in the living room. We'd watch usually Monday Night Raw first, and then we'd watch Nitro after it. Or maybe it was vice versa. Or maybe we started out watching Nitro first, and then eventually when Stone Cold happened, like when he won the title, I think we flipped it. We watched Raw live and then Nitro. And that was the thing. Like that was that when I remember I'm old as my birthday today. But remembering back what it was to be when I was 18, 19 years old. I was 19 years old and not having to worry about a mortgage, not having to worry about being a parent, not having to worry about being a husband. When you're in your 20s, listen, man, when you're in your like early 20s and you really, your only responsibility is let me get through college and let me have this part-time job and you can kick around and not worry about shit else. Those are kind of good days right there. I'm really happy with where I am because I don't have the pressure back then that I had of, man, I got to make something of myself in this life. Well, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at right now. I got a pretty damn good career. I got a pretty awesome family. I am as happy. I'm probably happier than I've ever been in my life. But there's always that little piece that's like, man, to not have any fucking responsibility whatsoever. That was pretty nice. But yeah, I would say that because it was like, man, wrestling was hot. There was so much enthusiasm. We never knew what was going to happen next. And you had these two companies trying to bring their A game. Yeah, that was probably 1998 was probably my favorite year to watch wrestling. Not going to lie. Possibly Blitz says, if you had the choice to change one pivotal wrestling moment, WCW dies, AEW starts, Vince buys the territories, etc., what would it be and why? AEW starts, I would prevent the beginning AEW, that'd be terrible. I don't want to do that. Oh man, it'd be Vince buying WCW. Yeah, I think that would be it. Like, I don't know. It never really lined up with what it should have been. The invasion thing kind of sucked. They brought in the NWO. That kind of sucked. ECW and WCW formed an alliance. That sucked. Stone Cold went bad guy. That kind of sucked. There was some cool, like WrestleMania 2002 was kind of cool. Stone Cold versus the NWO. That was all right. Of course, Rock Hogan was really cool. But I don't know, man. I think it would have been a lot cooler had the original plan of Eric Bischoff taking over, rolling with Scott Steiner as his big heel, getting that slot on Fox Sports, which is I know like almost happened. That I think would have been a much cooler alternative to what ended up happening with Vince just owning everything. So yeah, I would probably say that. It'd be like, yeah, I probably would have tried to prevent Vince from getting his hands on WCW. I think wrestling probably just would have been better off. It probably would. I'm not saying that WCW necessarily would have survived, but I think Eric Bischoff might have had a good chance at turning a profit. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just deluding myself. I don't know. But yeah, I think Vince getting his hands on WCW probably was not as good for the business as there being actual competition for WWF. Leopold says, if you were to debut as a wrestler, what would your wrestling entrance theme and finisher be? Love your videos. Best wrestling channel on YouTube, friendo. Cheers from Argentina. Wow, Argentina, that's cool. Well, welcome to Wrestle Juice, Mr. Argentina. Leopold or Leopoldo. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's a cool name. Man, if I were to be a wrestler, which by the way, I never ever considered, I could not do that shit. I will guarantee you this big ass head would be hitting that mat so hard I'd get concussed every single time out. So I never considered it. I always knew, man, not for me. That being said, if I did want to, looking back now, I would probably use a CKY song. Probably 96 Quite Bitter Beings, because man, that is just a killer song. That's my go-to. That sort of cheesy. I like CKY. It's cheesy as hell. All right. But there is no better gym music. There is no better working out music than CKY. There is nothing better. So I'd probably use 96 Quite Bitter Beings or Inhuman Creation Station. One of those two. That'd be my music. As far as my finisher, I don't know, man. I wouldn't want to do anything where I'm landing my butt because that's going to compress the spine. So no stunner, no leg drop. Power bomb. I couldn't trust myself not dropping somebody on their heads. My finisher would probably be, oh man, I've never even really thought about this. The End of Days looks really cool. I'd steal the End of Days. That's what I would do. I mean, that's what I used for Steve Thunder's finish, the Sad Last Days. But man, that was a really cool move. Baron Corbin is such an underrated wrestler, man. It's a bummer they don't push him more. Granville Nation says, if you had the opportunity to conduct an exclusive sit-down 60-minute interview with any of the 3 members of the Shield, which one would you choose and why? It would be Seth Rollins. Because I feel like he would be most eager to open up. And I think it would be a fun conversation. Mox, I don't know. I want to read his book. It came out ages ago. I feel like I don't know how much I'd get out of Mox, and I feel like I'd get even less out of Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns did some sit-down interview with like Paul Heyman, and it was at some like fancy pants, like, I don't know, Power Brokers thing. I don't know. I saw like the logo, but I couldn't make it out necessarily. But this is just recent, I think. And he was being super interesting and opening up big time about like process and character. But I feel like if I got the interview, he probably wouldn't open up that much. I'm just some dude on the internet. That's not very impressive. So yeah, I would say Seth. I feel like Seth is probably a dude who'd probably talk a lot. Shotgun Sean says, how are we feeling about the 2-week space between All In and All Out? Still too short of an amount of time between pay-per-views, or is 2 weeks good? 2 weeks is way better than 1 week. I'm cool with it. I'm actually cool with it. I think that if they, especially next year, I don't know what All In, All Out, because I know All In's going to be in July, so I don't know if All Out's going to be the same weekend as it usually is. So there's going to be an even longer space of time between the two shows, I think. So that's going to be a little bit different. But I like 2 weeks. We had that big angle with Swerve and Hangman. The Jack Perry match, that's kind of an underwhelming opponent for Danielson, even though I really like Jack Perry. I feel like there probably should have been a bit more connection between the two, between All Out and All In. But you got the Hangman Swerve stuff. That's really good. I still don't know. It's Friday. I don't know if Mariah May is going to have a match or not. I'm not sure. But yeah, no, 2 weeks I think is good. Hundo Mo says, what is the biggest what could have been moment / individual in the last decade? And he mentions Keith Lee and how that all went down at WWE. For me, it is kind of related to that. It's NXT. That group, if Vince McMahon really let Triple H cook, give him the resources, let him go out on the road. Look, I know people say, oh, it'd be a money loser. Everything's a money loser. They get a shit ton of money from TV to make up for it. It's several billion dollar deals. You're telling me they couldn't take NXT out on the road? They couldn't really build it into a proper competitor for AEW? Get out of here with that. That crew was so good. That roster was so awesome. If you take what they did at Survivor Series 2019 and you really let them build from there, then I think the sky could have been the limit for the Black and Gold. Those takeovers were awesome. You see that philosophy play out with their premium live events now. So yeah, the biggest what if to me was, what if Vince McMahon really let Triple H cook with NXT instead of doing what he did? Sort of didn't really give him the proper resources to really compete with AEW. And seemingly Vince was upset that they didn't blow AEW out of the water with the ratings. And you see what happened. Vince basically, when Triple H got sick, Vince shut it down and made it into 2.0, which is fine. I know a lot of people like 2.0 and that's great. But yeah, man, I think that's my biggest what if. The Anime Fan says, what do you think about the recent AEW lawsuit? I don't know if that's going to be successful. I have my doubts. Matthew Denton says, what are the chances of Cena winning number 17 next year? I don't think they're terrible. He's got like a lot of dates. He's got like, what is it, like 30 dates? You could do a lot with those 30 dates. You could do a lot. And I don't think WWE would be too sad to have John Cena be the record guy. I think that they'd probably be okay with it. I think they'd probably want that because that dude is pretty clean. I would say, yeah, it would not shock me to see. I know Triple H is a big Ric Flair fan, but it would not shock me to see Triple H want Cena to have that record. I think it'd be not a terrible idea for WWE corporate to have John Cena be the record guy. Braden Loader says, what is the worst title reign of any belt you've ever seen? The worst title reign? Probably Vince Russo. Boy, terrible idea. Just an awful idea. Literally it made me ill to think about watching WCW when that guy put the title on himself. I had no desire to see that shit. Shaw7548 says, in CM Punk's iconic pipe bomb promo, he openly criticized Vince and the WWE's corporate structure, blurring the lines between kayfabe and reality. Given how Vince appeared to be the target of these criticisms, how did he allow such a promo to happen? How did his ego allow it? I think that because Vince understood that being the target of that promo was just good TV. And I think Vince was always open to whatever, as long as it was good television. I think he probably understood that painting Punk as the anti-authority guy was kind of in the vein of, it was like a more of a reality-based way of doing Stone Cold Steve Austin. So I think that's why he was cool with it. Vince has a big ego, but he's also the kind of guy who just understands, okay, well, number one, like it's not going to knock him down any pegs. Like Vince already, he already went through a lot as a character on TV, and maybe he separated the two. But I think he just knew that it made for really good television. And in the end, that's sort of what Vince's thing was. He just knew it made. There was other weird things that he wouldn't allow people to do. Like at Hall of Fame induction ceremonies, he didn't want people thanking him. That was like a big no-no for him. But he was cool. I don't know. I could see it. I think I understand. I get it. He just knew it made for compelling television, and he never cared about being the villain. He was fine being the bad guy, even if it meant a more realistic version of being a bad guy. Little did we know he was much worse than even the pipe bomb illustrated. But Mobile Jam Fran says, if you can make any change to the greater wrestling landscape, what would it be and why? I would want it to be more welcoming to all sorts of different fans. That's what I would want. Every fucking time I go to a wrestling show, not every time. Last time I went to SmackDown, there was a dude not, 3 rows near me who was like saying some, not overt, but some vaguely racist shit during one of the matches. Just shouting it out. I was like, I can't bring my kid to this. The time before that, when Larson and I went to the December 2018 Raw tapings, the McMahon shakeup, there was a dude a whole fucking section over screaming at the top of his lungs just endlessly scream, because JoJo was the ring announcer back then. JoJo! Just screaming his lungs out, trying to get her attention. We're up in the fucking second row. Or in the second section, the second level, the upper level. What are you doing? Every time. And then all the stories about different interactions that female fans have had at the shows. I would just, that's the one change I would make, is just wrestling fans, just fucking be cool, have fun with the show, and don't be weird. And I know, here's the thing, 99% of y'all are totally fine, but there's always some fucking weirdo out there, man, who makes it weird for people. I would just get rid of the weirdos. That's what I would do. So that's the one change I'll make to the wrestling landscape. Anyways, that's going to do it for Ask Wrestle Juice. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Hit that thumbs up, hit the subscribe. We'll see you guys around.